to the Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders, a podcast series that takes on the exploration of all of the subjects related to sustainability, circular carbon economy, digital smart cities, all of the various ingredients that gets all of us closer to a net zero outcome. But there's also the sort of the plumbing, if you like, that goes into the building of sustainability leaders, the building of departments within companies, within ministries that are built around a sustainability vertical. And of course, many companies and many institutions in the Middle East and African region are for the first time coming to this challenge, having maybe had ingredients of it as we've all had CSR or some elements of sustainability in our strategy documents, but rarely and rare is it to find that companies and institutions have had departments or divisions dedicated to this area. And we have one with us today who has been in it for some time. Raji Hattar, Chief Sustainability Officer of Aramex. Welcome, Raji.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you very much for this great interview that's going to happen now.
Raji, it's rather unique that Aramex, I suppose, no surprise, one of the most pioneering companies in the Middle East region, has had a chief sustainability officer since 2008. I hate to tell you, that's a whole 15 years. Time flies. But tell us, if you could, a little bit of a once upon a time narrative. How did it come that Aramex saw, even back then, shortly after, I think you probably just went public maybe around then, that you had the vision, the company had the vision that this was an important thing to do?
Actually, since the establishment of Aramex, Fadi Andour, our founder, and at that time he was the CEO of the company, he was looking at sustainability as a part and parcel of the business process. So it's not something that it's done aside. So we were focusing mainly till 2005, 2006 on the social part of the ESG. Then 2006, 2007, we started getting involved in the environment because Fadi and the team saw it's coming. So it's not something that, you know, somebody told us, well, guys, go and do it. So we saw through our work with international organizations, with the UN, that this is something that is going to come very soon. We started working with, I remember 2007, with the World Economic Forum and all the logistics players on calculating the carbon emissions per shipment. So that was in the early days. As you mentioned, 2008, Fadi assigned me as the Chief Sustainability Officer to take care of all the three aspects of the sustainability. And we've...
When you say all the three aspects, what are the three?
Well, now we call it ESG, environment, social, and governance. It was to be called the three pillars: social, environment, and economy. So there are different namings that every day you'll see a different name for sustainability. We still call it sustainability, but for the investor's sake, it has to be named nowadays as.
But it's interesting that that's the pillars. E, S, and G are the pillars. That is the foundation of the position of a chief sustainability officer. They're your three verticals.
Yes, sir. Now, and they are integrated in total. So it's not one thing and not the other thing. So you cannot say I'm active in the environment, but I'm not active in social. It has to be, fully integrated. Now, Aramex, to start with, is a very light asset-based company. So we rarely own assets. So our warehouses are leased, our vehicles are leased. So this also puts a great impact on us, or a great challenge on us, when it comes to control our carbon emissions and the net zero and all our commitments to that.
Of course, you are in a business where your product has a very high carbon. I mean, the overnight delivery business has become not only massive in the sense that the industry has grown so substantially, but the service does come with a high carbon footprint. How do you mitigate that?
Well, let me start with saying that we are one of the most polluted industries on Earth. We contribute to 14% of the world's pollution and maybe 20-25% of the carbon emissions worldwide. To be able to mitigate that, you need, first of all, to look at your impact, from where your emissions come, and you start working on that. As a company, we control our scope 1 and 2 in the emissions. Scope 3 comes from our subcontractors, our partners, which are the airlines and the sea lines, because we don't own neither planes nor ships. When it comes to Scope 1 and 2, we started looking at our fleet. 2008, we started integrating hybrid vehicles in the fleet at that time. Unfortunately, hybrid did not go commercial, so we had to drop it. 2016, we started implementing electric vehicles in our fleet. We started in Jordan. Now I have around 15% of my fleet in Jordan is 100% EV. As we speak, we are testing now in Saudi Arabia and in Dubai, and we hope before COP we'll have a good number of EVs in the streets running in UAE. Also, we looked at our electricity consumption, and we looked at renewable energy. We started again in 2016. Currently, we have 3 solar farms in Jordan, 2 in Dubai. We just signed one in Egypt, Saudi Arabia. In Jordan, for example, the solar would cover more than 70% of our country consumption. That includes charging the EV vehicles. Also, we look at energy efficiency in our offices and warehouses worldwide. On Scope 3, we are currently in talks with several airlines worldwide. We had a meeting 2 months back with around 9 airlines to start looking on how we can cut down our emissions. We did that.
Literally today was this week was one of the first times Emirates have ever put a plane in the sky with completely carbon-free emissions. Just as a pilot.
Sustainable Aviation Fuel, SAF.
Yeah.
And we are in touch with all these airlines. Last year we did the first test with SAF with Air France KLM. We did a pilot there, and currently we are in talks with other airlines to see how we can implement that. Unfortunately, SAF has some issues whereby demand is way higher than supply, and the supply is not available worldwide. So if it's produced in Europe, you cannot just ship it to UAE to use it in the airlines. The second thing, the cost is extremely high, and it costs maybe 4 or 5 times more than your regular aviation fuel. So, but this is
which is already very expensive.
Yes, sir. So this is how it's evolving. We will see how it's evolving, but we are working with all of these airlines. On the sea freight, we see that lots of sea freight lines now are changing the engines of their ships to run on natural gas, but this is going to take very long time. But that's in Scope 3. So we try as much as we can on our supply chain to impact our suppliers to cut down their emissions.
Yeah, there certainly will be. We're both seeing in shipping with IMO 2020 the requirement to reduce the sulfur component of fuel oil from 3.5% sulfur, and in 2020 it had to come down to 0.5. And now there's new targets in shipping to get to decarbonize even further and to get to close to 0 by 2050. I want to talk a little bit, Raji, about just the structure of your position. How, in the context of Aramex, who does the CSO report to the CEO? Who reports to you? Can you tell us a little bit about your organizational chart and how it was structured, how it's evolved? How do you think it will evolve going forward?
Well, the structure is very simple. My team is only 3 people, so we are not a huge team. Okay. Knowing that we handle more than 200 projects worldwide, because we took it from day one that there will be no separate sustainability team. It's every single person in Aramex, including the CEO and the board now get involved with us, are sustainability officers. And this is how we disseminate the culture of sustainability within the organization. If it was only a big team that's handling sustainability, then people will start saying, oh, that's your job, not our job. So, for example, when I test the EVs, I work with operations. I do the testing recommendation, and they do the whole implementation for that. So I do not follow as a team on these projects. We create the projects and design them with the business owners, and based on this, they will take it over and move. When it comes to renewable energy, it's the facilities management team that will take that over from us. So we structured it in a way that it's embedded in the business process. And I can mention one thing. 2008, we wanted to cut down our emissions by a significant amount. So we just amended our procurement policy to say you are not allowed to lease a vehicle that's not Euro 4, Euro 5 standard. In 1 year, all my fleet shifted from Euro 1, Euro 2 to Euro 4, Euro 5. Immediately, I had a cut of around 17–18% of my emissions at no cost. It was actually, they were saving on the fuel because these vehicles, you know, they save more than Euro 1, Euro 2. So the structure is basically embedding sustainability in every single process across the network. When it comes to strategy setting, we report to the strategy committee on the board, and the strategy committee is involved in building the strategy. Now we are working on a strategy till 2030, and we almost finalize it. So it comes board, management team. I sit on the management team. So the board, the management team, process owners, and everybody in the company would be part of the sustainability structure of the company.
And in that, is there any particular education? Is there, I mean, you talk about the evolution of awareness around the challenge of sustainability business being critical for the bottom line, but also for the climate. And we think about such things. We started our conversation talking about the 3 ES and G, but there's another trilemma which is a critical component here: people, planet, and profit. How do those 3 intersect with the ES and G piece? Because inevitably sustainability is about obviously keeping a profitable business, but also aligning. But the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, how does that feature in your strategy?
Well, the 3 Ps basically fall under the ESG as well. So people is the social, the planet is the environment, and the profit comes in different areas. But the governance was highlighted heavily because it governs the whole system of the company. So it's the profit, it's the people, it's the planet, and whatever comes between them and intersects. So all of them fall under one umbrella. Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask you about the people piece, which is inevitably social, and that is you know, we talk about everybody in your value chain being a sustainability officer. How does that feature in, and where does obviously the social and well-being piece of the people, the staff that you are your staff, but you also said you're asset light. So much of your social, your people, if you like, are out of your immediate control. How do you reach beyond your team, your staff, into your sort of subcontract space and ensure that social piece? You know, we've had a lot of discussions in recent times about the gig worker, the remote worker, all of them having different or no rights. How does that work for Aramex?
Well, to start with, when you talk social, it's your people, your employees, and the communities around you. So your impact on the people and the communities where you operate in. And our sustainability strategy is built on 3 pillars: education, youth empowerment, entrepreneurship, and the environment. Under the education, youth empowerment, that's our impact on the young people and on the areas where we operate. Now, when it comes to...
Sorry, you said that quickly. Educational youth empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we support young people in areas where we operate in to go to universities and finish their university degrees. And this does not come for free. So I educate you. You need to come back and do community work in your community every week, supporting younger people in the community, supporting elderly and everything. So it's I give you, you give somebody else. Now, internally, we do a lot of awareness programs for all our staff, including the subcontractors that we work directly with. Also, when we choose suppliers, our supplier evaluation form includes all the items that are in our code of conduct. That includes the E, N, S, and G. And also, we try to do education for some of these suppliers that we have direct contact with. The agreements we sign with the subcontractors says that you and your subcontractors have to abide by the international laws and regulations related, for example, for human rights and labor rights, for preventing pollution across the globe, and this has to pass to your subcontractors as well.
We talked earlier about the E and the carbon. You talked about the environmental steps you were taking to try and lower your carbon. You've talked a little bit now about the social element and the labor engagement. What about G? Where does governance fit into your role, and obviously within the context of how you advance that within your company as the CSO?
Well, Anna, my role looks a lot on the governance side from the point of human and labor rights. So I make sure that human and labor rights are taken care of in all aspects of business in Aramex, with internal dealings and outside. The rest of the G, which is anti-bribery and corruption, the violation of any of the international laws and regulations, that falls under the risk committee of Aramex, and I sit as part of this committee, so I have some influence there. But the physical take care of these aspects is done by a different team. But my main role is related to the human and labor rights aspects of the G.
When we look at the role, again, Chief Sustainability Officer, you've held that position and job title within Aramex, one of the most successful companies in the region. How important is it? I welcome your advice for companies who are looking at creating this position or something like it for the first time. How important is it, or is it not, from your point of view, that there is that chief in it? There's the chief financial officer, everybody knows that. There's the chief commercial officer, everybody knows that. The chief operating officer. But what about, how important is it in order for a successful ESG strategy that the position actually is similarly ranked and similarly titled in Chief Sustainability Officer, or is that not important at all? Your thoughts on that?
Well, to start with, ESG is becoming a driver. So it's not anymore thing you do because you are good and you want people to see that you are good. So it is, besides it being an opportunity, it's a high risk if you do not implement. So putting somebody to manage this aspect needs to have teeth. Otherwise, you don't put, with all due respect to companies that put the chief sustainability officer under marketing or branding, or something that would show that, yeah, we are doing very well. Because now greenwashing is very clean, very clear, and people can see it, very obvious. Plus, I talk about public shareholding companies. Your investor would look at ESG as much as they look at your profits. So they need to see a very strong strategy that is driven by a strong person who can deliver on the promises and the commitments, especially now with the 2030, 2050 commitments. There's a lot to be done within organizations that requires a very strong position that handles these types of jobs and aspects.
Do you have to, do you have the authority, and should it be embedded in the position that you hold your colleagues to account to meet certain standards and of that are set?
Actually, we did it in a different way. We embedded the ESG within the business processes. So it's not me going to the chief operating officer and telling him, no, you need to go and buy an EV or lease an EV. We put in the procurement policy, your first choice for leasing an EV is EV. Leasing a vehicle is an EV. If there's no EV, you go hybrid. If there's no hybrid, now we are saying Euro 5, Euro 6 standard. So it's not me imposing on him. We changed the business process to reflect that. So people now do not look at it as a sustainability issue, rather than it's a business thing that we need to do. For example, we say you are not allowed to print. If you need to print and you need a printer, you buy only a printer that prints double face. So this way I got 50% of my printing. So this is how we embedded it in the business process. That's why it does not require me to go and impose it on somebody. But for me to make sure that I meet or as a company we meet our commitments, we need to have some sort, or the CSO needs to have some sort of a power that he can come to the people and tell them, yes, we need to do this now and not after 10 months, for example.
Do you also have to be a resource? Can people come to you and say, listen, how do I do this better? Or, that there is an emerging expectation, a burden on people that maybe didn't exist before. Does the CSO and his team have to be a resource, like a library for its colleagues?
Yes, definitely. Especially now with all the demand that's coming from outside, from clients and from investors. So the investors team in Aramex would come to me maybe every 2-3 weeks. Either I go and do a presentation for the investors, or they have some questions that I need to answer. When it comes to the clients, every single bid that we receive now has a few pages, 5, 3, 4, 5 pages that talks about ESG in specific. So we are a resource there to support the commercial team. The CEO would get some requirements from outside, some queries. So yeah, we are a resource internally and externally as well. We are also part of different groups across the world where we exist, whereby we support organizations. I sit on the DFM Sustainability Working Group. We work on
the
several...
DFM, the Dubai Financial Markets, the stock
Dubai
exchange.
Financial Market, yes, sir. DIFC, DFM, and NASDAQ, there's a Sustainability Working Group to support the public shareholding companies on their reporting, on issuing new standards.
And when you sit in those spaces, do you have a vantage point for identifying some emerging trends for chief sustainability officers across industries? I mean, for example, we've seen some companies with the absence of a carbon price being imposed from regulators, companies are adopting a carbon price within their business operations and holding departments to account on the numbers around that. Do you see any trends like that or others that CSOs should be aware of?
Definitely, the CSO should be aware of all these because, as I mentioned, it's an opportunity and it's a risk. So you do not need to wait until the stock market comes to you and says you need to price your carbon internally at $100. You need to be part of the decision-making process at the stock market, so you can anticipate what is coming to you. And things are moving extremely fast nowadays. A carbon tax is coming, whether we like it or not. If it was not COVID, I'm sure all airlines would have imposed carbon tax on tickets because airports started imposing carbon tax. Some countries worldwide now embedded carbon tax in their fuel prices or their electricity prices. So all this, the CSO needs to be aware of and make sure that he or she integrates with the business owners to make sure that this is embedded within the business process itself and not something that comes out from nowhere.
When we look at the role, obviously you operate on a global level, but you're very much anchored in the region. You're in Jordan, your business is based in Dubai, but operates across the Middle East and further afield. I'm wondering, is your role or is the role of a chief sustainability officer? I mean, you've been in it 15 years, you probably predate many publicly traded companies on the NASDAQ and elsewhere, but is there a different purpose or function that the CSO in the Middle East and Africa needs to be aware of, alert to, as compared to other regions in the world?
Well, to start with, mainly nowadays I'm based in Dubai and not Amman, so because of the requirements that are happening there. Now, what's happening in the world now and things that you need to be aware of, especially in the Middle East, is the supply of the technology. For example, to get an EV van in the Middle East now, but we've been trying for the past 4 years till today. There is no available EVs in the market. Sedans out there.
To go out and buy one, if you want to go out today and buy one, you just simply can't do that.
You can't, and when you can buy, and they'll tell you will deliver maybe September or December even. Wow. Or somebody will tell you till next year because the demand increased heavily in Europe and the US and in China. So now they are not exporting as much as what was supposed to be imported in the Middle East. So the supply is way less than the demand. The second thing is regulations and the certification or allowance of you implementing or installing renewable energy. It's not as open as it should be. Because, and I'm sorry to say it here, but your competitor in this is the regulator. So you install solar, the energy company would lose revenues. So that's where this is one of the challenges that is there. Another thing that is major for EVs, for example, is the charging infrastructure. We lack heavily charging infrastructure in the Middle East. So even if you have a fleet, you need to worry about your own charging infrastructure because it's not available yet on a commercial level. So these are some of the challenges that CSOs need to be aware of when
what about on the social side? I mean, we see a lot of countries maybe still having to do more to comply with international labor, ILO as it's called, the UN agency, International Labor Organization standards. And so in different parts of the region, there can be social unrest and so forth. Is there issues there, much progress that needs to be made?
Well, in Aramex, since the establishment, we said we are going to follow the best international standards. So wherever we go, we implement that for us. So, and this prevented us from too many things across the last 20, 30 years or 40 years since our establishment, is that whenever there's a new regulation that comes up anywhere, we're ahead of that. So it's not something that somebody comes and hits you on the head. And this is what I advise any CSO, is to make sure that you comply with the international standards. Then wherever you operate, it's easy. And I remember the launch of the UK Anti-Bribery and Corruption Act. At that time, I was a compliance officer with the sustainability. And when we sat with the UK people coming to the region, and I asked them, why are you coming here? This is the UK thing. And the gentleman told me, well, if you buy a box of match from the UK and you are in Ghana, Uganda, or in Dubai, the law applies to you because you are doing commercial. So it's not anymore, I'm sitting in the Middle East, I'm far away from the rest of the world. I'm not, because now everything is open and everybody can see what you do.
Transparency is everywhere. There's a camera not far away. Let's just wrap up and talk a little bit just on the fact that this year and last year we had COP27 in Egypt, a big market for you, COP28 in the UAE, of course, a big market for you. How significant, I'm sort of wanted to get your insights on, there's clearly an acceleration towards compliance with sustainability, to adopt sustainability strategies. And so in that acceleration, errors can be made. I'm just wondering the opportunity you think that COPs in the region are presenting for the advancement of sustainability, and what are some of the pitfalls to watch out for in that acceleration?
Yes, actually, one thing I want to mention, I'm mentioning it in many events, is that when you are in UAE, as a private sector, sometimes you need to follow the government because the government is moving extremely fast. Their commitments are very high. So that's an advantage for private sector. And the minute the government is looking at the electrification of the transport, then this would bring suppliers to the country. And with the COP now, I see the focus is extremely higher than before, and we get calls now from different suppliers coming from all over the world to the UAE to be able to present their products. So that's a big opportunity for us and for other private sector companies, that COP is driving these people to come to the region, which will make it easier for us, to move faster on implementation of our commitments.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Raji Hattar, Chief Sustainability Officer of Aramex, join us on the Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders podcast with some great deep insights from his 15 years as a Chief Sustainability Officer in the Middle East Africa region. Thank you, Raji.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, the Gulf Intelligence.